está aqui com a gente no nosso estúdio o palestrante internacional Shaun Smith, especializado em experiência do consumidor. Tudo bem, Shaun? Conta pra gente a respeito da experiência do consumidor, mas voltado para as marcas brasileiras.
Well, that's very interesting because if you look at the Brazilian market, it is growing so rapidly. So, so many foreign brands like Zara and so on are coming into this market and becoming highly competitive. And so the question is, how can Brazilian organizations compete effectively? And I believe the way they do that is by creating a better experience for their customers or their clients. If you compete only on the basis of the product that you sell, then customers will typically buy on the basis of price or functionality. A good example of that is MP3 players. Once upon a time, you buy an MP3 player, they were just a commodity. And when Apple came into the market with the iPod, it created a whole new kind of experience for consumers. So if you look at in the Brazilian marketplace, and brands, for example, like Chili Beans. Chili Beans say they sell style. They happen to sell sunglasses and watches, but what they sell is style. And what they understand is that by creating a very stylish experience for young consumers, by making an exciting brand, by making the stores themselves fun and inviting, then they create an experience so that those consumers will buy again and again and again. So another example, I think, of a strong Brazilian brand that has differentiated itself from a commodity is Havaianas in flip-flops. We think of flip-flops as being a mass-produced product. It is a commodity. You can buy many different varieties of flip-flop, and there's nothing to distinguish them. Very few customers would say, I'm going to buy that type of flip-flop. They buy because they like the style and the price. What Havaianas did was to create a fashion brand of flip-flop that in fact was differentiated and that customers will pay a premium for. So in the Western markets, for example, people will buy Havaianas because they recognize the brand and it's a fashion statement. So people will be buying and using a Prada handbag. They'll be wearing perhaps a Gucci jacket, and they'll have a pair of Havaianas on because it's a fashion brand. So I think it's a good example of how you take a product and you then create a very strong brand from it. I think it's true to say that customers buy what your brand promises. And if your brand promises something which is of interest to them, then you create a strong brand. An example of that is I was driving through Sao Paulo and saw the very large Harley Davidson dealership in Sao Paulo. And of course, if you take Harley Davidson, this is a lifestyle brand. People buy Harley Davidson not because it's a motorcycle, but because it's a lifestyle. And the clothing and the events and the holidays and the merchandise and all of these things that typical customers buy is part of that experience. In fact, Harley Davidson owners spend as much money on accessories as they do on the bike. So it's a very strong lifestyle brand. It's not a motorcycle. I think another interesting brand, for example, is Natura, and how Natura has been able to create some differentiation in the sort of the cosmetics marketplace through a brand which stands for purity and beauty and so on and so forth. And so once again, it's distinguished itself from many competitors because of the brand rather than the product.